What are some of your main takeaways, biggest differences that you see in today's EPI versus that January 1st, 2020 EPI?
Yeah. Wow. So what a great question. So I would say it goes back to one of the answers that I gave you in one of your previous questions. I believe that we are way more employee-centered and centric and way more employee-driven. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Exit Is Now podcast with me, your host, Scott Snider. I have Chase Ross from our executive leadership team here. He is the one that develops all of our products here at EPI. So if you've been interacting with EPI Academy or any other new product or even a new version of the SEPA program, it is likely that Chase has created it and has reviewed it. So Chase, welcome to the show. It's his first show. And if you guys recall from a few months ago, every fourth or fifth episode in 2024 here in season 2, we're flipping the script. We're having people that know me well, have influenced our company, have walked through value acceleration with me, come in and ask me a bunch of questions. So again, as I did with Jesse back in February, I have no notes. Chase has given me no prep. So I am just going to turn it over to you, Chase, and let's fire away. Welcome to the show, man.
All right, thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
I do have one non-business related question to start
Great.
us off.
Great. Fire away, my friend.
All right. So as someone who hosts a podcast, is on a podcast, as a guest frequently, does webinars, records for our programs. How do you feel about listening to the sound of your own voice on a recording?
I think it's actually super awkward. I don't think, like, we were just talking about this as we were kind of winding down actually last year when we looked at the overall catalog of courses that you created in EPI Academy. And I have not watched any of mine because I'm just like, this is super awkward. I remember going all the way back to 2020 when we were pivoting the SEPA program to an online version and having to go through all of those, videos that I remember it just being like super, super awkward. But I would say with the podcast, it's kind of interesting. I don't watch the video version of the podcast. I go on Spotify and listen to them. And I typically listen to them while on a RV trip. So kill some time for me. Yeah. But nonetheless, I think, super, super awkward.
I hate it. It drives me nuts. I hate the sound of my own voice on a recording. When you told me, invited me to be on the podcast, it's like, oh, super exciting. And I was like, wow, I actually hate the sound of my own voice. There's no way I'm listening.
Well, then don't
to this
listen.
After.
Just
I'm
don't
not
listen to the episode, right? You're going to have to just send it around to family and friends and say, dude, I'm not listening to this.
I don't know what kind of delusion I've created inside my own head, but I sound nothing like I sound when I listen to myself on a recording.
I think everybody feels that way. I think that I don't think that I like the sound of mine either. Like, I know that I have a deep voice, and then when I hear it, it's like even deeper, and it just seems very awkward to me. Though people always say I got this cool radio voice. So
that's true.
Like, maybe it works for the podcast.
My first job, I worked at Taco Bell, and I worked drive-through, and people would tell me like, "Oh, love your voice on the drive-through."
So weird. So on the drive-through, when they rolled up to the window, were you guys actually at the window?
Yeah,
too?
Yeah, it's like both. So they would, they're at the screen and they're ordering, and that they hear my voice as I'm talking, and then they pull up, and I would always get compliments. I'm like, I don't get it.
What? Well, you got a nice voice. What is your favorite thing at Taco Bell, though?
Ooh,
has it changed from young Chase to non-Taco Bell working Chase?
As someone who worked at Taco Bell, I would still eat there. Some people, if they work at a restaurant, they're like, I'm never eating there again.
Try to stay clear of Taco Bell.
I would still eat there. I like a nice, just a beef potato burrito, something along those lines.
Not a chalupa?
No, I'm not a chalupa guy.
Okay, fair enough. All right, well, let's fire away.
We'll get into the real topic here.
Yes.
So I wanted to spend some time today reflecting on mainly the pivot that EPI went through in early 2020, COVID, pandemic. I started here just like a month or two beforehand, so been here for about over 4 years now. Wow. And so I felt that was like a good time to reflect and see where we've changed from them to now. So my first question is related to that first day that I can remember where you came up to the office and you basically sent everybody home, where you said, hey, everyone, we're going from fully in person every day, and now everybody go home fully virtual for at least at the time it was 2 weeks. We didn't really know how it was going to roll out. So my question is, do you remember on that day how you felt, or specifically like what was going through your head on that first day you had to send everybody home?
Yeah, man. Wasn't it like you had just started though? No,
it probably was like 2 months in, something like that.
I always think that's an interesting part too, where Chase worked here for 2 months in person, and then it was like, okay, on day 61, see ya. We're gonna get to know each other in a virtual world. I think it's just had to be so weird for you, but. Yeah, I mean, I remember a couple of things. So I remember that time because I had actually was coming home from vacation when our pandemic started to roll out. And I remember having to cancel, Georgia State University's SEPA program in person in Atlanta, then canceling Cleveland in April, Chicago in May. And then when that felt, though it was super tough, obviously, it felt a little bit more distant, right? Because it wasn't directly affecting me right at home, but I remember coming home, and this is, I'm still kind of an old school guy now. If you gave me the chance, Chase, I would literally have everybody come to the office 5 days a week currently.
Right.
But we've moved to this hybrid model that's Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, an option. But I felt very disconnected at the time, right? I think that if people can recall, because Jesse had a kind of a similar. 2020 was a big year for EPI, so Jesse had kind of similar, walk talking through those kind of big years. But I was much more like, I wasn't as flexible. I wasn't as open to change. So I remember just feeling very out of control. And again, I owned a landscaping company, would be in person every single day, right? And then into EPI, we were in person every single day, just like totally out of touch. And then worried that I just wouldn't get to know you guys the way it was. Because even when you started, we're still a relatively small company. And just not being able to work with you guys every day. And then on beyond that, you guys here have heard me talk on the show. You guys truly are like a family to me. And, not seeing you guys every day was actually, kind of a chunk out of my life, right? Because I was like, man, now I got to sit at home by myself every day like this. I'm not an introverted guy at all. It was pretty wild. But yeah, it was very out of control for me. It was very, very awkward moment.
Yeah, I can remember from my end, we go home, and I can remember talking to Joe Clower, who's a member on the team, and saying like, all right, well, we'll see you in 2 weeks. And then, was like, 2 years later, we're back to normal.
I guess that's a good perspective too, right? Because you didn't think it was going to be as long as it was. Right. I mean, we were out for like 2 months.
Yeah. Pretty much. I can remember, it definitely evolved over time. At first it was, like you said, going from pretty old school. So like at first when we're virtual, it ran pretty tightly. We're meeting on Zoom multiple times a day.
Right. The check and balance.
We're doing a lot of check-ins. But over time, it loosened a little bit. It goes maybe a little more hybrid. We start to prove that there could be some success given the model. So do you have a time where inversely it struck you, oh, you know what, this can work?
Yeah, I would say that to your point, it was really about results. And probably, if I'm being totally honest with you, it was probably even more frustrating for me because I'm like, damn it. We can all hit these. It actually works. Yeah. And now I'm like, now we're always going to be home. Like I can't possibly do this. And but yeah, I would say that I don't know if I could pinpoint a time, but if there was a point to what you were saying is, and for our audience, talk about control, right? This is probably wild for those of you that don't know me from the Scott of 2018 and 19 or the Scott of 2020. I was a pretty controlling guy. And so I made our managers like meet every morning as if you were to come to the office, you would see everybody, right? So I said, look, we're all going to jump on a Teams meeting and your specific marketing is going to meet and sales will meet and member experience will meet. We'll all jump on at 9 a.m. and check in. And at the time, we didn't have like a mechanism that would allow people to have the green light, red light, right? Where you could see that your employees were working. So to build that trust, if you will, we would do like even an afternoon check-in. But then to your point, we started to prove ourselves and we started to roll out the new SEPA program and we started to see sales go back up. Because you got to also remember at the time, I'm pretty sure in April, maybe even in March, definitely April, we had zero revenue.
Yeah.
So we had all of the expenses with no money coming in.
Right.
So like letting you guys go home and work, and especially for guys like you that we're close with that I don't really know, right? You had a critical spot on the team but I don't really know you. It was like took a lot of trust. Then put on top of that, you put this like zero revenue in. But then we started to hit the goals. And then one quarter turned into 2 quarters, turned into basically the remainder of 2020. We have gone through that Initiative 1 leadership training. We have all gotten a little bit closer. And I think when we walked into 2021, we went to the virtual hybrid and also announced a unlimited vacation policy.
Right.
So to like polar opposite of like super controlling, get everybody in here. I couldn't argue with the results, and that's why still today they're not BSing you. If I had a choice, I would love everybody to come into the office 5 days a week, and maybe just purely from a selfish standpoint because I like being with you guys, but there's no reason to, because the way in which we run things today, we hit all of our goals and everybody seems really happy. So it's like, it's just the way it goes.
How do you feel then? So we've been in our current hybrid model of like 2 days in office a week for about a year now. How do you feel that's been going? Do you plan on keeping it that way? Even though you say you don't want to?
Yes, I plan on keeping it that way.
How have you felt about this year from that perspective?
Yeah, so no, I certainly wouldn't change really anything that we have done over the past couple of years in terms of building our culture and the way we operate. If you looked at our employee satisfaction survey last year, so we do, and I would challenge our business owners to think this way and maybe and adopt this if you don't have this already, is we do an employee satisfaction survey anonymously, so people do feel truly comfortable giving honest feedback twice per year. So we'll do it 6 months in and we'll do it 12 months in. And and if you're a SEPA listening, we know the 1 through 6 scoring scale, 6 being perfect, 5 being best in class, 4 being slightly below average, 4 being slightly above average, 3 being slightly below, 2 is risky, and 1 is non-existent. We have gone during the same time period from a 3.8 pre-COVID to a 5.24 in 2023.
Yeah.
So in the common sense scoring scale that we teach at SEPA, part of the value acceleration methodology, a 5 is best in class. So to your question of do I plan on changing anything, I would be a fool to change anything. But I also think that the blend of being together for 2 days and having that virtual option for 3 is also something unique to our culture that allows us to grow the way we have, allows us to achieve the things that we have. But again, the results don't lie. I have to look at folks like you and the rest of our team here at EPI, because you guys are saying what you've built not only drives results, but we're all really happy and we have a high retention rate, and we're here to stay and we're here to grow. So I'd be a fool to change anything at this point, even if I would like to come back 5 days a week.
Yeah, so you mentioned retention rate. I was going to ask a question on this.
Sure.
One of the things that I've always been interested in or impressed by working at EPI is our retention rate. I always think it always stands out to me as something that we do really well. Yeah. What do you attribute that to? What do you think that leads to, particularly going back to the question of reflecting on that 2020 period till now? I think there's a decent amount of people who were here at that shift in 2020 who are still here today.
Right.
And so what do you think makes people stick around like that?
I talked about this a little bit last year in one of my LinkedIn posts where if you remember, in one of our quarterly renewals, the team exercise that we did was rank your benefits, right? So there's like 19 benefits that we could offer. And from 1 to 19, or maybe even 1 to 10, what were some of your favorites? What that exercise, I think, showed wasn't really about the exercise itself. It's that I think over the past 3 years, EPI has really become an employee-driven company. So even though I might want to be here 5 days a week, you guys don't, and I just need to let that happen. And I think that one of the contributing factors, one of the key elements to a high retention rate and a high employee satisfaction score is that I'd like to think, whether you're an office administrator or an executive like you, Chase, that you can kind of control your environment. So I'm really looking to you guys and saying, what do you guys want? What environment, what workplace, Where would you love walking into every single day? What would you love being a part of? And obviously, with 30 something employees here today, I can't perfectly make it for everybody. But if you could blend it together, I think that we kind of perfectly make something that is representative of all of us. So I would say that it's a hard thing to do, but saying that though this is my company, it's really our company. So tell me what you want, even though it's not necessarily what I'd like to be doing. And so I think that that contribution to high retention rates and not, having high employee satisfaction scores, that it's really an environment that you want to create.
Right.
So it's like, tell me what you want and I'll try to make it there.
Yeah, and I think that's worked out pretty well. I think a lot of people would agree, and like you said, you can tell from the employee satisfaction survey, it's kind of working out for people.
Absolutely.
And I think, one of the other things I was going to mention that I think leads into that, and this has been brought up on the podcast before, but is our training with Initiative One, which we've had Tracy and Fred Johnson on the podcast, so you may be familiar with them if you've listened before. Yeah. But I think that coincidentally, our initial training with them also happened at the same time in early 2020.
It's weird how it all fits together.
Right, where, COVID happens, and then we immediately kind of already had it planned to go into this training with them. Right. And I think that I'd be interested in your perspective, but from my perspective, I think that helped tremendously with keeping things together.
I think that it is one of those moments where it's like the universes connect, right? Or if you're a religious person, you might say that like it's God's hand in work or something like that. But it is always one of those moments where in my career you sit back and say, wow, I can't believe that happened in such a way. Because we actually were supposed to start it in 2019. And if Fred and Tracy were listening, you guys were so damn expensive that I said, I got to get it into next year's budget. And so thankfully, I don't think it would have been as well received in 2019. Yeah. But it had a absolute major impact. My perspective is people have heard me talk about it quite a bit, where it not only, for me personally, it not only changed me as a professional and business leader, but it changed me personally as just a person and who I am, and had a deep, deep impact. And I think that for many of us on that core team, like you said, that were still around in 1920, going through that original wave of folks, I think it had a deep impact on everybody. And so by kind of investigating who we were and being like a little vulnerable with each other during this kind of odd pandemic time, we got to know each other in that way that I thought we would do in person. I got to know you by you just being open and honest in a virtual platform, and talking through how we were evolving our leadership skills, our personal purpose, and all of these types of things. And it really shaped, I think, who EPI is today. So to your earlier question about, creating that culture and all of that, I don't think we would have been able to do that without going through Initiative One. It just gave us a whole new perspective on how we wanted EPI to run and who we wanted EPI to be for all of us. So it's like monumental moment going through that. And I always think it's just so weird how it kind of was all put together.
Right. Yeah, totally agree. I think that would be a good time for a break.
Yeah, you want a break?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, Chase is in the driver's seat today, so you guys stick with us. We will be back here just in a quick moment. Thanks.
For business owners, by a business owner. Walking to Destiny is your essential resource for understanding what makes your business highly profitable and significant. It becomes a business owner's handbook to know how to rapidly grow value and ultimately unlock the personal wealth trapped in business. Exit Planning Institute CEO Christopher Snider demonstrates how strategic exit planning will help you achieve improvements today while positioning you to build wealth for generations. Secure your success along other value creators. Discover, prepare, and decide what your walk to destiny will ultimately be. If executed correctly, these strategies can grow a business owner's wealth by 10 times. Walking to Destiny, the second edition, the 11 actions an owner must take to rapidly grow value and unlock wealth. Get your copy today at www.walkingtodestiny.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast, hanging out with Chase Ross and the Exit Planners here. For those of you that don't know that, Chase is actually a musician, and we always said that Chase Chase should have a band that performs at our exit planning summit called Chase Ross and the Exit Planner. So maybe we can get you there in 2025.
But the band is all EPI team members. We got to get everybody together. You know, Jesse, who's been on the podcast, he's singing.
He's singing.
Chris Snider's up on stage with the tambourine.
He is a professional tambourine player. That is for sure.
We get the whole team involved.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe we'll see that next year at our summit.
All right. I'm in.
Okay, so fire away, my friend.
All right, so I want to back up a little bit here and focus specifically, again, we're talking about that 2020 transition that EPI went through, but focus specifically on SEPA. We haven't talked about, the actual course too much and that transition. So I can remember one of the biggest concerns we had, prior to COVID, we had all in-person SEPA programs, no 100%. Online. And then, after that, you move almost immediately to all online, no in person. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest concerns we had at that time was the potential drop in quality.
Right. So
can you talk through your process on how you tried to avoid that, how you thought we did, maybe some steps we took along the way, what that initial push was to transition that.
That's and it was a quick time. We ended up, right, because again, you heard me on the first segment of the show talking about how we had to cancel 3 programs in a row. And if you had something like 50 to 80 people each, I had a few hundred people which were programless. So we actually, the first program that then debuted, give or take like May 1st of 2020, was really built in like 45 days. So we probably could have done a little bit of better quality control. So if anybody's listening and you got certified in that early class, thank you for bearing with us in our new venture of virtual online education. But it's a great thing. And for those in the audience, right, like that is Chase's world now. He might have worked on the project back then, but Chase's whole world now is developing products. And I guess really early on, Chase, you were hired in to be a quality control type guy as well. So one of the things that we really wanted to do, again, going back to this in-person thing, that if you were certified pre-2020, we would learn a little bit and then have group work involved. So you would sit around these round tables and you would follow a group. You were assigned a color or a number that you would partner up with for 5 days straight. And we knew that we wanted to replicate that. So we created these self-studies. I guess going way back, we created really what we became known as 3-layered learning. You'd sit in the virtual classroom. From there, you'd go into self-study exercises, which is the application of what you learned in the virtual classroom. And then you would come back for a 4 p.m. faculty meetup. I think from maybe a quality control program standpoint, I think it's pretty hard to sit there for like 4.5 hours. If you remember some of the early SEPA videos were like 4.5 hours. I think we got them down to 3.5. So we've kind of cut an hour and a half out of it. I think that they flow a little bit better. We've learned more about, and for the folks that experience now, you probably don't understand the production, right, that goes into these things. We learned a little bit more about how people learn and how people should be approaching the camera. And kind of honestly, one of the big things too, Chase, was like the motion sickness from people looking at a screen going back and forth versus side to side. All of these things that we were learning that I think contribute to your overall experience that you receive along the way. And I think that we've shortened up the 2-hour faculty meetup to an hour and a half, keeping it kind of focused around the core content and the methodology, upgrading some of the materials that you get. Right now you get like this really nice SEPA online program box with all the good stuff that you need to be successful within it. Nonetheless, in those early days, we used to actually include these cups, if you remember.
Yes, I do.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was, again, for those of you in the early days, you might have just said, hey, cool Summit cup. These are our Summit series. I wanted to try to tie you into the community, right? Because try to get that community feel that I think is unique to EPI. But a lot of change, I think, over the 3 to 4 years that we've been producing our online SEPA program. I think for the better. That kind of streamlined it and deepened the way that we can educate people.
Yeah, I definitely a work in progress, as you were saying. Do you have any standout moments that you can remember from that first online SEPA program?
I don't know about
how that first one went.
First one, I think we were all kind of nervous and scared. The thing when you ask that question, and for those of you that are tuning in, right, we flipped the script. Chase is asking me questions versus me asking my guest questions, and I haven't prepared at all. These are just him firing in. So these are a lot of off the cuff kind of things, off the top of the head. The thing that comes to mind when you give me that question is, and if you guys can take yourself all the way back to the early days of the pandemic, and you were getting on these Zoom calls, and you had these videos and people on the news talking about people hacking into Zoom calls. It was primarily happening at colleges and universities where people would just get the link or the code and just jump on a random Zoom call and would cause like a disturbance to class. I remember getting on that first faculty meetup and saying like, okay, and remember, this was like a bunch of people that had canceled classes. So there was like 300 people in that first class.
Right.
Going on this Zoom call. A, I never really work Zoom. 2, I'm an in-person guy, not a virtual guy. I have to host this faculty meetup with 200, 300 people. I sure hope that somebody doesn't get this random link, hack my Zoom call of my professional education program and do something ridiculous on here, because I'm going to have to boot them out, and I don't even know if I know how to boot them out.
Right.
That was kind of one literal fear that I had. And the other one was, and if you go back and we're in some of those early classes, we used to debut the class live. So even though you were watching a recording, you weren't getting access to that recording. Like, it wasn't just put out there in your member center. So for those of you coming to the SEPA program today, you go into your member center, you go to my courses, and you pull up your video for the day, and you watch that, and almost on your own time, right? Back in the early days, you would log on at 7 in the morning Eastern time, or then again at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and we would have to click a button and air that thing live. That was like that. I can remember sitting there at 7 a.m., tuning in myself, the very first SEPA program, and hoping that thing debuted.
Right.
Because there's 200 people. Everybody's on edge because they don't know about virtual education. It's really not what they bought. They're coming along for the ride with us. Everybody's just kind of tense because of COVID. And I'm saying, if that push of that button doesn't air this show, we are double screwed.
Right.
Because we're screwed now because people are kind of like forced into this program because there's no other option. Then they're going to say, see, virtual education sucks. From what I recall, though, and you were around, from what I recall, everything went like really seamlessly.
Yeah, I do remember it went pretty well.
Like,
we definitely
better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, we definitely didn't have any like major crashes or anything. I obviously, there's a few hiccups here and there, but like overall at the end, people were pretty happy with it.
I think it was pretty good, and I think it was, again, for the quality thing in a way that we were proud of, right? And then it was allowed us to learn and start evolving that program into what you mentioned today. I mean, we have 11 programs a year that are all virtual.
Right.
Pretty wild.
So off that note then, so like I mentioned, pre-COVID, all in person. Now, like you just said, 11 programs, all virtual. Any thought to ever doing in person again if there's a need? I know we get asked about it sometimes. People are interested, but we're not sure what the best path is for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question, and I'll answer it in two ways. I'll answer it in like an educator way, and I'll answer it in a pure business owner way for our audience too. In order to make a SEPA program profitable as a privately held business owner, I have to have at least 50 people in a room to the quality that we want it to. And I understand that if you looked at EPI versus other programs, we might spend a little bit more cash in trying to make that program really first class.
Sure.
And what we did, if you remember, Chase, too, we tried to debut new programs in 2021 when things came back in person a little bit.
2 or 3 times.
But only there was like 24 people in one program and 28 people in another. And so really didn't really make any money in the program. And to your point about demand, people say they want in person, but we really weren't coming. Now, since then, we had no in-persons in 22 and no in-persons in 2023, but I still would like to try to host one. So if you're somebody listening to the show and have folks that want to come in person, please let us know, because it's something that we're actively thinking about. I'd like to try we do get people that want an in-person, and I think more so than ever now that we've been kind of disconnected in this virtual world, wanting a more in-person event. For us, the in-person event is the Exit Planning Summit every year. If we want to kind of get together as a big group, that's kind of where we go. But I'm not taking off the table a SEPA program that is conducted in the kind of old-fashioned way where you would fly into a city, do 5 days, and learn in person, be able to have group work and networking. And I think that the thought now is, instead of going to these different educational centers or destination cities around the country, is bring them into Cleveland.
Sure.
Where EPI is headquartered, and you almost have an EPI experience along with it. be able to meet guys like you and the overall EPI team, maybe go out to a ball game and do something. So it's not just the SEPA program, it's the SEPA program plus, but certainly not taking it off the table by any means.
Yeah, I would totally agree. Like you said, we've had a lot of conversations about it around the team. I think that there is an interest there. We just got to figure out how to do it potentially.
Yeah, totally.
So really, I just have one last topic for you,
okay, fair.
Which is what are some of your main takeaways, biggest differences that you see in today's EPI versus that January 1st, 2020 EPI?
Yeah. Wow. So what a great question. So I would say it goes back to one of the answers that I gave you in one of your previous questions. I believe that we are way more employee-centered and centric and way more employee-driven. I think for Chris and I, over the last 4 years, as the owners of EPI have become a lot more decentralized. One of the things now we're even working on is decentralizing us from the SEPA program itself. You saw it last year. Me and Chris didn't even participate in one of our SEPA programs at all, and everything. It was a pretty big success. So I think that if you looked at the EPI January 2020 to today, in 2024, you'd find an organization that is really centered around our certified exit planning advisors, centered around our community listening and gaining feedback that then is executed by our employees, and really the owners are decentralized entirely or more in that visionary role where we're probably happiest at and most successful. I think that the culture is wildly different than it was in 2020. Literally new core values on the wall that came out in 2021, early 2022. And talk about community. I think that we have that community here inside of our own little company, Exit Planning Institute, with the 30 or so of us that are here. So to me, it's really focused on the people and the power of the people that we have here and where it's taking us. But it's been really an honor, honestly, to see folks like you go from a marketing coordinator, right, is where you first were?
Yeah.
Kind of on the marketing team to now on our executive team. And frankly, if you're talking 2-3 years down the road, a huge advancement. I mean, you're talking to the guy that, for the listeners, the guy that has rolled out all of EPI Academy. Like, you have a pretty huge role here in developing new products, and being able to sit alongside you and kind of watch that happen has been, I think, a testament to what I'm talking about, this power of the people, decentralizing yourself and letting you kind of run with it, and letting these people that have this ownership mindset, this entrepreneurial mindset, just give them the resources and let them run. I think it's a very cool journey, man. It's been like a pretty wild ride, but like what an evolution of EPI over the last few years.
Yeah, and not just myself. A lot of people on the team who have evolved their roles over time. Yeah. Get to do new things, new opportunities, something that wasn't in their original job description when they first came on.
Well, hey man, I appreciate you hanging out. Have we fired away on all the questions?
Yeah, that was it. Thanks for having me. Thanks for humoring me with my questions.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for coming on. I always like hanging out with Chase. Hopefully we can go grit a game of pool right now. One thing that I thought for sure you were going to ask, you were going to put out like Shark Tank style, slide an offer into your dad's company and it's not called a Ross rack, though. Yeah. I think he should, if he's listening right now, Chase's dad, please consider changing it to the Ross rack. But what's the rack called? Shameless plug, rossbilliards.com. Get the King 15 rack. The King 15 rack. Check it out. Me and Chase are pool players. Every time I play him, I lose. But nonetheless, thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you, Chase. Please subscribe, listen, and leave a review on all of our podcast platforms. And we will see you next time, guys. Thanks.